Hello, welcome to another installation of TechTalk. How exciting, the boys are back. It is another session and Mikey will give us a great topic. What have we got today, Mikey?
Efflorescence is the key to today's discussion. Also, in the same wheelhouse as floor coverings and all that sort of thing, and a bit of wet weather around as well. So I think there'll be a bit of talk around that sort of thing. But yeah, absolutely. Efflorescence, guys. Thoughts?
Yeah, I guess efflorescence, it's a frustrating part of concrete. There's nothing more frustrating than finishing a job and then a few days later, for whatever reason, all of a sudden there's these white spots on the slab or a little bit of moisture gets on it and it's instantly turned white. And it could be nothing but frustrating for contractors to try and figure out, why did this happen? Polished concrete, it's meant to be this indestructible thing. Why is it happening and what we can do about it? I was actually quite fortunate to not come across it all too much. So I really don't have much of an input. I feel like Josh would have more experience through efflorescence. Might be that Melbourne climate, not sure.
Wow.
Yeah, he's had more rain lately, mate.
Look, Milan, it's probably, that could be, you might be onto something there as far as the landscape is concerned. Yeah, we get a lot more telephone calls in Victoria, or at least I do personally, about the efflorescent subject. I think what's really important to understand is that pretty much any porous building material is subject to efflorescence. So what is efflorescence? We're going to show you a few photos of what you might see. And that is what efflorescence looks like. Or typically looks like on a project. You may even see it in many different areas of building, but you've just never really paid attention to it until it was a problem on your floor. In about 80% of cases that we come across with efflorescence, the efflorescence is actually being caused externally. So outside of the building, where we see typically efflorescence occurring is when we see a building that's been cut into the side of a hill, and there's not adequate drainage, and this is a really, really typical scenario that we'll see efflorescence in. And if you understand how efflorescence works, then you'll understand this scenario. Basically, what efflorescence is the salts or minerals coming out of the concrete. Now, those minerals are in the concrete from the actual concrete production, and they are normally just sitting there dormant and stable, but they are soluble. So that means once they get wet, they start to move again. And what we're typically seeing in our application is the concrete slab has been installed. There's moisture around the slab, or there's something bringing moisture to the slab. And it's, as we know with concrete, it's always emitting moisture or vapor through the surface. And when it gets to be a high content of moisture, it starts to bring up, those soluble salts back to the surface. So if we understand where it's coming from, that should hopefully help us to understand a bit of the remedies to it. And also, if we understand that there's a certain amount of minerals in the concrete, then after a certain period of time, then that should also dissipate as well, because once they've all been pushed out, there's nothing left. All right, and this is not an equation that we can give you because we don't know how much is actually in the slab that you're looking at. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it makes sense, Josh.
Yeah.
So what's the magic fix?
Hey, well, Mike, what do you do about a sore tooth?
Rip it out.
Pretty much, and there's not really any easy way around it, because what most people ask for when they call up is, what chemical treatment can I put on this to fix it? And there's not really a chemical treatment product that you can use. Some might say, can I use a moisture barrier type of densifier? And that may take care of preventing the salts from getting up to the surface level, but it's going to keep them below the surface level, but you'll still see the salts. Right, because we're not putting a coating over this to hide anything, so we'll still see it in the surface. So it'll still look cloudy and white, just it won't be making its way to having that surface salt. So that won't fix all the problems, but I think the major issue with that you'll encounter is that these are a different type of densifier, and that they work by creating a gel structure rather than a crystal structure in the surface. So they're not really polishable in the sense of the word that we're used to doing in mechanical polish. So you might slow down and reduce some of the efflorescence from appearing on the surface, but the problem is still going to be intrinsic. So unfortunately, going back to pulling the tooth out, the only way to really fix efflorescence is to get to the root cause and find out where that moisture is coming from. And we see it most typically coming in from the side of a slab. A slab has been poured, slab on grade, has a plastic barrier in there, boxing comes off the sides, no moisture proofing or no moisture proofing around the edges before they put the garden and everything in. The landscapers put all the garden right up to the earth. There's no protection there, and like the scenario I painted before, it's on the side of a hill, and that one side of the house is always more susceptible to gathering moisture, and that's where it typically starts to suck it in. And if you've got north-facing windows in that house as well, generates heat on the surface, which means that it pretty much tries to exit the moisture faster because of the heat. So it just keeps on drawing moisture in and going through the whole time.
Is there any telltale signs which are, before you start a job, or is it kind of stabbed in the dark and, it shows up later? Is there anything I can look out for, to, I guess, protect myself from efflorescence in advance?
Look, the best thing to do is just to do that walk around on the project. Have a walk around the house, and if there's no protection, no moisture barrier visible between the garden bed and the concrete, right up to the base of the foundations there, the house, there's a chance it's going to occur. Sometimes you can already see it working its way up the brickwork, and that's what it looks like. There are telltale signs. You see it in other materials as well.
The interesting thing is throughout my experience, and I feel, and coming back to this, it's funny actually. We've talked about this quite a few times, where it's not just a TechTalk for concrete polishers. It's also for builders. It's also for architects. Also for homeowners. So I feel that it's really important that there is good education on also good ventilation. Because
yes,
we've seen this in coastal areas, when we don't have good ventilation built into homes, we get actually moisture. I've seen, for example, a really nice house in Byron Bay. Rugs were like, it wasn't actually, I think from memory, it was a surface polish. Owner put rugs down, moisture built up under the rug. He peels back the rugs, and he's got this great white crystallized layer on the concrete. Almost it feels dusty. And he's like, what is going on here?
I'd nearly put my money on that house being built by someone who lives in a different city, and they have very, very different understanding of the environment versus what's in Byron Bay. Hence, it hasn't been built with adequate ventilation.
So you guys have been talking about prevention and all that sort of thing. I'm still standing here looking at it, and I've got it in front of me. What's the magic fix, guys? How am I fixing this issue, apart from doing things like putting it in my contract? That could be an issue, so that would be signed off and I'd be covered there. Anything that I'm looking to do to try and fix this issue is additional works that will be chargeable. Apart from all that fun stuff and covering ourselves, is there any way that we can try and improve the situation?
Okay, so once you've identified it, as I said before, Mike, we can try and take care of get to the source. Once we fix that, remember, this stuff is soluble. If it's early, then we can pretty much wipe it off with hot water and get and remove it. If it's been there for a bit and it's a bit heavier than that, it's pretty much, you can expect to go back to the stage where you densify the floor, so reprofile it and polish it back up and blend it back in. It's usually only heavy when in a localized fashion along the edge of a wall. Very, very typical for it to be between the, say if you've got an outdoor patio area and then you've got a threshold coming into the house, and they're pretty much neck and neck or similar heights. That join between the two slabs tends to gather very, very regularly where we see it.
So you're talking about grinding it back and back to densification. So I'm guessing if it's a surface polish, you're probably going to be out of luck a little bit.
No. Even in a surface polish application, it's pretty much just going to be going back to the resin at the densify stage. So when I say densify stage, Mike, pretty much I just mean going back to your first resin, creating the removing all of the affected material, reapplying densifier, and then polishing back up from that densifier stage. Okay,
so you don't have to be so heavy-handed.
No, you don't have to be so heavy-handed, Mike.
The other interesting thing is I feel there's a lot of confusion, or correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, because we see this all the time. So we've got obviously efflorescence that is caused by the actual materials installed by the concreter and mixed at the concrete plant, let's say, right? And then we also have reaction from sealers with moisture that can look like efflorescence as well. Two different things, very similar looking in its appearance, correct?
Yeah, okay. So specifically, I think, Daniel, you're talking about impregnating solvent-based sealers, and you may get what looks like early stages of efflorescence, and that's where you start to get a bit of a cloudy effect over the concrete. And both of them can exist together, but usually you'll see the sealer one first, and that's if we're applying sealer to a slab that's actually got moisture retention.
Yeah.
Would water-based impregnating sealer rather than solvent-based help with that issue a little bit? I'm not saying fix the issue, but is it something that can sort of go towards helping a bit more?
He's a guy who knows his products. Yeah, absolutely. The water-based sealer, impregnating sealer, is absolutely the way to go in a situation like that. Even in the scenario that Daniel mentioned before with the Byron Bay project, that is a perfect scenario for water-based impregnator all the way. It's not even worth taking the chances. You don't have to go out and do all the math and that. And for those particular scenarios, go the water-based. Be downstairs in a cellar, basement, go the water-based impregnating sealer.
Garage is a good example too. Maybe condensation from the aircon drip dropping down on the slab as well. Or like you said, anything coastal, very close to the water.
Car moisture, anything from the car. I mean, the other interesting thing is as well, obviously, we know there's a lot of timelines and there's a lot of push on builders getting projects done quicker than what concrete polishers would like to, obviously with green slabs and moisture content in slabs. So we also, what's your recommendation on actually before sealing a job, how long till the slab is cured, Josh? Well, what's the timeline on that?
Well, I wouldn't like to get onto any project, if I could help it, I wouldn't like to get onto any project inside the 28-day mark. And the reason for that is because we're not talking about being able to walk on this concrete, we're talking about cured concrete. And we've got the maximum reaction out of the calcium hydroxide on its own before adding the silicate to it, so the densifier. Anything earlier than that is still forming. So you're always taking a bit of a risk. Many guys will do the base grind in 14 days, a surface polish in 14 days. Surface polish is probably a little bit easier, simply because you've just got such a high content of calcium hydroxide in the surface by comparison to a deep grind. So, okay, let's create a couple of rules. Surface polish, 14 days. Deep grind, full exposed aggregate, let's go for 28.
28.
We'll come back to this one in a year and see if I'm going to be crucified.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Well, that's a very good topic. I think we've had a good go at it. Any comments below would be greatly appreciated, and I'm sure we all know by now how to put photos into comments and things as well. So if you've got any photos, it'd be good to see some examples, some befores and afters, maybe. Love to get the interaction. So thank you, guys. Is it time for a frothy? I think.
Time for a swing. It's like for you, Mike.
I was just swinging on a cup of tea, but it sounds like it's that time again.
Time to make the switch, Daniel.
One of Daniel's cups of tea. They usually have a bit of Irish in there as well, don't they? Worry about that.
Just a cup of tea. Great to see your faces again, and we'll see you again with another session next week.
See you next time.
Stay juicy.